Hey everyone, we're back with Kerbal Space Program Career Mode Mission 3. This is the Minmus Maybe I launch. The goal of this mission is to get all the way to Minmus, take some samples in, get back. It's probably going to be a little too long to upload to YouTube all in one piece, unless I do some video editing. Hopefully I'll get that figured out. But for the meantime, we're going to try and do this all in one take. The first phase of this launch is going to be getting the vehicle to a stable Kerbal orbit. We're going to be aiming for about 80 kilometers up, just high enough to where we're not decaying without having to spend too much fuel getting out to a bit of a further distance. With that said, I think we're pretty much ready to go, so let's go ahead and launch. Alright, for this part of the video I've gone ahead and sped up the footage to about 4 times normal speed, just to save some time on the overall duration of the video, and so we don't have to spend quite so much time watching me do things like achieve stable orbits and other mostly long and boring parts of the video. As you can see, I was having some trouble keeping the rocket stable during this phase of the launch. Even with my design adjustments to try and make this thing balanced, it still wants to spin out of control. I did eventually get it going on the right direction, though, and sped up so that we could achieve an orbit. But it definitely was not fun, let's put it that way. As you can see, we've separated the first stage from the rest of the vehicle. At this point, it became much easier to steer and control the rocket. We're still attempting to achieve stable Kerbal orbit at around 80 kilometers, but for now, it's pretty much just an academic exercise. We're setting up our burn at the apoapsis, rotating into the correct alignment, and just waiting for the correct moment. Then we should go ahead and hit the burn, and we will be on our way to a stable orbit. Alright, and with that, it looks like we've reached a stable orbit of 80 kilometers out. So from here, we're going to plan our approach to Minmus. Alright, we're here with the next phase of Career Mode Mission 3, the Minmus Maybe I. I've gone ahead and plotted out our intercept course with Minmus. It should be relatively simple. We just need to go ahead and get lined up for the launch, wait for our node, which is about 60 minutes away, and then we should be able to start accelerating. Most of the rest of this part of the mission is going to be done in the map mode, just because it's nice to be able to see the orbits as they change so that we don't overshoot or undershoot. Of course, we do have a little bit of leeway to work with, but it is nice to have a real-time view of things as they change. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and get lined up and ready to launch. Alright, that looks like it'll do it. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up a little bit, just so we don't have to wait the full 14 minutes. Now, at some point during this, we're probably going to lose the second stage of the rocket. It's just going to run out of fuel, so it will probably take longer than 40 seconds for us to do the burn. I am going to go ahead and start around 20 seconds in, just to give me some time, maybe 30 seconds. But it will likely take longer than that to get us out to where we need to go. Alright, and surprisingly enough, it looks like we've made it the distance with fuel to spare. I was not anticipating that. We're still probably not going to carry this with us the whole way, so I'm probably going to go ahead and disconnect the rest of this rocket, just so I don't have to take it with me, since it's definitely not going to be able to land on Minmus with us. But I suppose I just overestimated the amount of fuel it was going to take to get to the orbit we were looking for. Alright, and with that, we are on an intercept course. Obviously, we've got some time to burn before we get to our next burn point, which is going to be about halfway there. We're going to do a bit of a burn to try and stabilize and get closer to where Minmus is going to be so that we can have an actual encounter. Alright, and that's good enough. Looks like we've got a Minmus encounter on the route. So we're going to just go ahead and fast forward to the actual encounter, and then we'll go ahead and establish a stable Minmus orbit. Alright, and that is Minmus encounter. So obviously the next part of this phase, we are just going to go ahead and burn in to get a circular orbit. For landing, we're going to probably stabilize a little higher than the surface, say about 30 kilometers up, for the initial sort of survey of the planet to try and find an appropriate launch site, or landing site, rather. Again, Minmus doesn't have much of an atmosphere, so we can be much closer than we would, say, Kerbal, to have a stable orbit. So we're going to go ahead and bring it in to about 35 kilometers, and then we will do a survey and pick a landing site from there. Alright, and with that we have a stable Kerbal orbit, or a stable Minmus orbit. So from here, we're probably going to go ahead and pick a landing site that looks good. It's probably going to be, one of these flat seabed regions that look relatively easy to land on. That, or we might shoot for the tops of one of these flat plateaus here. Alright, we're back with Kerbal Space Program Career Mission 3, the Minmus Maybe I. At this point we have a stable Minmus orbit, and I have plotted out a course for our landing. We're going to be aiming for this large seabed here. We've got a long way to go before our actual burn point, so I may have to adjust this as we orbit just to make sure we stay aligned on target. But we are going to attempt to land there if at all possible. Anyway, let's go ahead and get this sped up and see if we can get a landing trajectory about where we want it. So as you can see, Minmus is itself rotating, so our anticipated landing point is not going to be exactly where we wanted. I'll probably slow this down again in a little bit, realign since we'll be closer to our intended burn point, and then go ahead and set up the appropriate burn to get a good landing site once we get a little bit closer. Likely I'll get it slowed down pretty quick here just to realign. Alright, that's looking pretty good at about 8 minutes out. I'll probably shift it a little bit just because we're going to anticipate a little bit more rotation of the planet in the meantime, just to make sure we get a good descent. We do have a lot of leeway to play with here. It's a nice big open space that we're aiming to land in. I'm going to go ahead and quick save before we get started, just because the only thing worse than failing a landing is failing a landing and not being able to reload, because obviously this is a long way to go to fail and lose a Kerbal. So with that said, I think we're going to go ahead and go with this path. I'm going to go ahead and speed it up and we'll see where we land. Alright, and there's our approach. Let's go ahead and get this sped up and see where we're actually going to come in. Alright, now that we're getting close, we're going to go ahead and plan our burn in. So what we're basically going to do is cancel some of our velocity to try and get what looks like a good landing site. Again, we're still anticipating for a bit of rotation, so we're going to try and hit. We are a little far north, so we might try and actually burn down a bit like that to line us up a little better. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and aim for that spot there, maybe a little short of it. Well, you know, a little long. What we're going to wind up doing as we get closer is burn to remove the rest of our velocity to try and get a nice smooth landing. But I think that should be a pretty good approach angle from here. So let's go ahead and get lined up and get ready to burn in. Alright, and that looks like a good trajectory. So what we're going to do from here, I'm going to go ahead and plan a node pretty close to the surface and just attempt to kill all of our velocity so that we get a straight drop. What that's going to tell me is give me a basic estimate of how long I'm going to have to burn to cancel all of my momentum and hopefully sort of drop to the surface. So let's go ahead and get lined up for that, and we will hopefully make a successful landing. Alright, and that's a successful landing, albeit a bit rough. So with that, I think now is the time to go ahead and collect our samples from the mystery goo. Very lovely high number of data. We're going to go ahead and keep both of them, and let's go ahead and do an EVA with Mr. Jeb Kerbal. Or, sorry, it looks like we're using Bill today. Sorry, Bill Kerman. Alright, with that, Bill has taken a surface sample, he's made his EVA report, and now we're going to go ahead and name his Minmus launch site and leave a plaque text that will be remembered for the ages. We're going to call the site Minmus Prime, and for some text, I believe I know just the thing that Bill Kerman would put. And with that cryptic message, Bill will be remembered forever in history as first Bill was here. Alright, safely returned to the ship. We're going to go ahead and make a crew report here too, just to make sure we've got everything all set up to go. We have our soil sample, we have our EVA report, we have a crew report, we have all of our canisters exposed. I believe that's pretty much everything we needed for this mission, so at this point, we're going to go ahead and head on back to Kerbal. Alright, sorry for that little scare there. I forgot to turn the stabilizers back on. Again, we are trying to conserve electric charge as much as possible so we can have enough charge to, get back safely. At this point, we're pretty close to done. We're just going to need to be able to support one more burn, which we have plenty of fuel for, deploying the chutes, and then landing. We actually probably have enough fuel left over. We may be able to soften the landing on Kerbal once we get there as well. But we'll see how that goes. For now, we're going to go ahead and get to our new apoapse, circularize the orbit, and then plot our course back to Kerbal. Alright, there's a stable. So now to get back to Kerbal, basically what we're going to do, we're going to zoom way out and try and find the point on the path that is basically parallel to Minmus's orbit, which is about where we are now. Well, it's a little behind where we were. So we're going to go ahead and set up a maneuver point there. And basically, to get back to Kerbal, we are going to burn out away from Minmus. And that way, we will eventually get caught back in the Kerbal gravity well and pulled back in. Now to get back into Kerbal, basically we're going to be shooting to plow our way through the atmosphere for an air capture. We could probably slow ourselves back down and circularize the orbit, given the amount of fuel we have left over. But I think in general, we're going to be aiming for this sort of a course. Well, okay, so we're going to have to do a little bit of adjustment. The problem with this is we're not coming off exactly parallel, so we have to do some adjustments to get an actual point. There we go. That's going to be pretty deep in. 30 kilometers. We might want to be a little deeper in than that. Oh, a bit too much. See, that's 90. 50. 6. Hold on. I'm going to keep fidgeting with this for a little bit. Okay, 27 kilometers in. That ought to be good. We're actually pretty much going to come in at the poles, interestingly enough. Now again, because we missed this point by a significant amount, we may have to readjust this as we get closer, but we're going to go ahead and go with this approach for now. Alright, that looks pretty good, so we're going to go ahead and set up for this burn and make our last push back to Kerbal. Alright, and that's a good solid approach. We're going to dip into 23 kilometers in. Hopefully that'll be enough to burn us the rest of the way in. If not, we may wind up making another orbit out and coming back in before we finally descend into the planet. But for now, let's go ahead and get this sped up and make our way back to Kerbal. Alright, and here we are back at Kerbal, coming in over the planet. It's going to be basically an unguided landing. Looks like more than likely we're going to be landing on land. We may make it far enough to get to that water there, which would be somewhat ideal, but we're going to go ahead and see where we land from here. Looks like we're definitely doing it Russian style, coming in over the land. It's okay, we do have a lander module here with plenty of parachute, so we should be more than capable of surviving this landing. But we just want to make sure we come in on a spot that's relatively flat, not on top of these mountains that we're passing over now. But it looks like the plane ahead of us should be a pretty good landing site. I'm going to go ahead and delay deploying the chutes until we're a little lower, just so that I don't start slowing down a little bit too much and land on this rocky bit here. As it is, it looks like we're going to come down pretty close to about here, if I had to guess. It's within an acceptable range, I think, for this vehicle to survive the landing without me burning. So we're going to go ahead and try an unassisted, simple landing using only the parachutes. Alright, and there's us landed successfully. A bit of an angle going on, but I'd say all in all a very successful mission. We had a spacewalk, we took some samples, nothing blew up. All in all, a good day, a good flight. Well, I suppose a good 5 days and a good flight. Anyway, with that, let's go ahead and get back to the Space Center and see how much science we got for the whole journey. And awesome. Let's see, it looks like we're looking at about 320 science gained for the whole mission. Vast majority of that coming from, of course, recovering a vehicle that has been to Minmus. We did get some pretty big bonuses for the mystery goo observations on the surface. Let's see, the surface sample gave us a big... Oh, I'm sorry, the surface sample is what gave us the most science. Recovering a vehicle from Minmus is actually not even as much as the EVA report or the mystery goo, at least the first instance of mystery goo. It is more than the crew report from Minmus's surface, though. So, all told, a very successful mission, plenty of science to work with. We should be able to buy a ton of parts for our next mission. I think all in all, I am very pleased with this third mission of career mode. Anyway, I think that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching.